Hello, it's Miss Rachel again with the Otago Prattville Public Library, and today we are making Spooky-fied book covers. So for this activity, you'll need the Friday Family Fun Kit, and I've got the items all laid out that you will be using. So we have the brown paper bag. In this case, you're actually going to want to hold on to that. We're going to use it for a major part of this craft. Then we have 2 sheets of green paper, a little container of Mod Podge with 2 or 3 drops of black paint in it, and I'll explain what you're going to do with that later. Basically it's just a holder for now. We're going to use some of the clear Mod Podge for gluing, and then we'll mix the paint in with it all together towards the end to do an antiquing type of effect all over. We've also got 4 small red straws, and those are going to add some texture and dimension, and 2 large straws that are just a little bit thicker. You should also have a marble and a cupcake liner. Some things that you will need in addition to what I have provided are a journal, a paintbrush. The paintbrush is very helpful, but if you don't have one, you can always use a little piece of your paper bag or something like that to dip into your Mod Podge, but the brush is really the way to go if you've got one. And then for the journal, you're going to want to use a journal or notebook or book that is somewhat small, more like a regular reading or paperback size, as opposed to like a college notebook size. That way we can get it fully covered with all of our paper. So I'm going to go ahead and unwrap this journal. It's new, so I'm going to take the plastic packaging off and take off the elastic, the extra paper and whatnot, and set that down. And what we're basically going to do is cover this black cover with all sorts of brown and green paper. We're going to leave the inside blank just as it is so it can continue to be used, but we're going to cover up the gray spine and the black cover with our unique designs. So to start, I'm going to use my straws to add some dimension to the cover and make it look a little bit fancier. So I'm going to take one of the large straws to start and get some scissors because I forgot them. Okay, I'm back with scissors. And I'm going to begin by cutting one of my large straws in half. Most of the rest of the cutting for this project can actually be done by hand or by tearing instead of cutting, so that's why I forgot about the scissors for a moment. But you can't really tear a plastic straw in half, so I had to run and get the scissors. I'm going to go ahead and measure this straw out halfway. I'm actually going to fold it first so I can get that crease right where I want it, and that way I can just hold it folded shut, slide one end of the scissors in and snip it. And then we have the perfect length, in this case for my book, for the top and bottom of the cover. I'm going to take the pink straw and trim it to fit between the 2 yellow straws. If you have the same colored straws, it's not a big deal, no big problem. They're going to be covered up anyway. So I'm just kind of trimming the straws right now to the length needed to make this border around the cover. So I'm going to get the pieces kind of situated, and then we're going to attach them onto the cover directly with some of the Mod Podge. So let me find my yellow straw again. There we go. It likes to roll off. That's a-okay. Once we get them stuck on, they'll stay put a little better. And they do tend to kind of squish and roll around generally. That's okay because we'll also be covering the entire thing with a layer of paper. So I'm just painting on a thin layer of the Mod Podge. You might be able to notice, but I didn't mix the paint in with the Mod Podge yet. I'm going to go ahead and wait and just use the plain Mod Podge in the same container for all of the gluing. That way I don't have to worry about getting multiple glues out. But you can also use liquid glue like an Elmer's glue or something like that, or you can use a hot glue gun for these steps as well. But for now I'm just using the Mod Podge, brushing it around the edge to attach the straws. And I'm going to trim where needed. Okay, so this next part of our craft is where we can really get creative with whatever you're doing. So I'm going ahead and putting my frame all the way around the book cover, and I'm going to do a spiderweb theme for this one. So I'm going to use the remaining straws and the cupcake liner, do some cutting at different angles, and we're going to create a spiderweb type of pattern. And so I'm just kind of laying things out and visualizing them as I go. You can absolutely do something different with your straws and your cupcake liners if you want. You can do spooky bones or cool designs. All sorts of options are available to you. I like the spiderweb because it's kind of simple and straightforward, but it still looks pretty intricate. So I'm just taking my time figuring out how I want my design to go, and then attaching each straw to its place with the Mod Podge. It doesn't matter that our straws are different colors here, and it doesn't matter that I have excess Mod Podge showing behind the straws. It's actually better to have a little bit of excess to help it really adhere to the book. But it's okay that things are kind of wiggly right now, and that also the colors don't exactly match, because we're going to cover it all up with our sheet of paper. So we're eventually going to take that paper bag that we've got and use that to cover up this whole design. But first we've got to create our design, so we're just doing this to add dimension and texture to the cover of our book. If you run out of little straws like I did, you can cut one of your bigger straws in half and then roll it up a little bit tighter so that it makes basically the same texture or width as the little straw. That's a pretty effective way to go to replace that. And then we're going to let that dry for a moment. Now I have disassembled my bag by just tearing off the bottom portion that was holding it all together so that it's a nice flat sheet. You can crumple it up first if you want to, but I think mine's kind of crumply enough. And I'm going to put a layer of Mod Podge all over the right hand side of this big sheet of paper towards the middle, and I'm going to gently set my book in with the back cover smushed down on the Mod Podge. Then we'll do the same thing with the other side. We'll paint more Mod Podge on the front where the cover is going to go, and we'll go ahead and put a little bit of Mod Podge on the book itself, just so that the stickiness of both layers helps it to really adhere down well. And then you can use your fingers to just press down on those details and help give it some added dimension. Now I'm adding my marble because I want to have a little bit of an eyeball look or an eyeball effect. Now my green paper was pretty straight, so I'm going to go ahead and crinkle that up real effectively, and we're going to try to make sort of eyelids for this marble here, which is going to be our creepy spooky eye for our creepy spooky book. We can also fold up our cupcake liner, sort of like you're going to make a snowflake, and cut it up just like you would doing a snowflake project, starting from the edge that's folded. And if you twist your lines kind of going the other way than you would usually go with a snowflake, you end up with a really cool spiderweb pattern. So I'm doing that delicate cutting, and then when you unfold it, ta-da, there you go. You can cut your spider web up and use little pieces of it to go in the corner, which is what I think I'm going to do with mine. But before I put that down, I want that to be one of the top layers. So I'm going to go ahead and start creating that eyelid for my marble, my pretend eye for the book, by just pressing down and kind of molding the paper to the marble and the book with the Mod Podge. We'll do the same thing on the bottom, just tearing little strips of the green paper to make that work. And then I don't quite like the shape of how the green paper turned out around there, so I'm going to add a couple extra layers of brown paper as well. That way it blends together a little bit more naturally. Again, I'm just using Mod Podge as the adhesive for this entire project, and I'm crumpling up my paper as I go to give it a nice textured old leather look. Your fingers are going to get a little sticky during this part, but that's okay. You can always use a piece of spare paper to wipe your fingers off a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in that spiderweb detail that I mentioned before. So now I'm removing the excess paper and securing down the extra paper around the borders. So I'm just folding it over to the inside of the cover and tearing off the little bits that are getting in the way of the spine so that we don't accidentally glue our book closed. But by folding down those edges, you give it a nice clean look all the way around, and it looks like an actual book cover and not just like you've added some paper to an existing journal. So there we go. It's time to let it dry for a moment. You can do a little bit more pressing at this point. And then our next step is going to be super simple. We can add any more embellishments at this point. If you want some outer colors added, you can add some more of that green paper. You can add some more spider webs or embellishments with your cupcake liners. I wanted to add a little piece of the green to the back to kind of tie everything together. Looks pretty good. And now we get to mix the black dots of paint in with our Mod Podge. And you can do this in the lid of the container that I've given you, and just give it a light brushing all the way over. As you can see, it starts out with this glossy gray look, but once it dries, it's a little bit more transparent, and it really adds an antiqued look to the brown paper and makes it look like old leather instead. So we can let that dry. We can also crumple up another piece of paper and dab that over to add more texture. And that's about it. We're going to prop it up, let it dry, and here we are. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fabulous day.